All right, welcome back to another episode of EventHubs Talking Block. I am John Catalyst Gray, and with me as always is John Velociraptor Guerrero.
All right, so everybody knows that Street Fighter 6 is a continually evolving game, right? And that we have DLC characters en route. And the next DLC character is Ed, and no one cares, except for maybe Ending Walker, and even then, maybe not. That's its own discussion, and it's not the one we're having today. The one we're having today is centered around the character after Ed that everybody, including Capcom, is more excited for, apparently, because they released character art for Akuma before they released much of anything for Ed. Yeah. And this is a character that's been in just about every Street Fighter game since Super Turbo. He's even made guest appearances in other games where Ryu doesn't make it out, a la Tekken 7, for example, and he is almost always one of the, if not the, best character every time he pops up. And so we have to wonder, as we have all these discussions about Street Fighter 6 and its balance and its tiers, what's it gonna look like when Akuma and all of his awesome tools and abilities and privileges come drive rushing their way, demon flipping their way, raging demoning their way into Street Fighter 6. Is there any chance that he won't be the best character in the game? How might Capcom nerf him while still maintaining his identity? And that's what we're going to get into today. So, John, I'm going to turn it right over to you. First, initial thoughts on what is Akuma going to look like in Street Fighter 6?
Well, so as you said, Akuma typically is a very strong character, but sometimes out of the gate he's not. In Street Fighter V, I went back and looked at our tier listing and other people, and they actually had him at 9th overall, basically putting him in A tier during his initial thing, and then things changed and he became one of the best characters in the game. In Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, he was top 5. In Second Impact, he was banned in tournaments sometimes, so that tells you how good he was. He's one of the best characters in Alpha 2. Alpha 3, he's one of the best characters. In Alpha 2, opinions were fairly mixed. And then in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, he was completely busted and banned in pretty much every tournament around. And then you remember him pretty well in 4. He was a very good character through parts of that game. Sometimes some considered him the best, but generally like kind of a top 5 range for Akuma. And the big reason for that is basically Capcom looks at Akuma's tools and says, let's give him. What if we give him more? What do you give him more stuff?
Yes.
He needs more stuff, like because he's Akuma, he lacks options. And just to back that up a little bit, in Street Fighter V, every one of Akuma's 12 normals, that's your standing and crouching normals, were cancelable in some way, either special, super, or V-trigger. So if you think Capcom is not going to make some of his normals not cancelable for balance reasons, I'd think again. They're probably going to look at giving him extra moves that he can cancel into and do more stuff with. That is Akuma.
As far as canceling in Street Fighter V, at one point, for a lot of the game, Akuma could cancel his regular fireball into V-trigger activation, thus making jumping over his fireball no longer the right answer. In fact, really, really the wrong answer. In fact, it didn't feel like there were right answers when Akuma had V-trigger stocked. Lest I go too far into that hellhole memory, let's keep going.
Yeah, so with the way that Drive Rush works in Street Fighter 6 being +4 on block or hit, Akuma is probably going to have numerous situations where he gets a normal on you and he's able to cancel it into plus frames or an advantage situation, basically. He's going to be an offensive juggernaut, quote the X-Men movie there, but we'll get banned off YouTube if we say that. But anyway, Akuma's most signature moves are mainly what I was focusing on here. I expect stuff like his Fireball and Dragon Punch to be about the same levels as Ryu and Ken. Where things are going to get interesting are with his Air Fireball, his Hurricane Kick, the Red Fireball, which you mentioned being able to cancel in on Street Fighter V. Just basically option selecting if people tried to jump it and stuff. And then, most importantly, maybe his Demon Flip. His Demon Flip is the thing that scares me the most right now because of how Drive Rush works in Street Fighter 6, and we might be back to some Street Fighter 4 shenanigans in terms of Akuma being able to just vortex you and cover all of your defensive options with a single attack. That was Seth Killian's infamous quote about Akuma's EX Demon Flip. He's like, if you don't want to have to think, if you want the game to choose a really good option for you, just do EX Demon Flip, and it's probably going to cover everything you need it to.
That's a good example of when you said earlier that they keep giving Akuma stuff. The way I think about him is originally he was designed not to be a competitive character. He was designed to be the boss, that the part of the game when you've mastered the game and you can beat it quickly without dying and all this stuff and you hit all these boxes, that he appears and he beats Bison with zero effort, and he's something of an enhanced version of Ryu, right? The most basic Street Fighter character archetype, the Shoto, that's Akuma. But his DP hits 3 times. His Tatsu has more utility and can be canceled into. Not only does he have a fireball, but he also has a triple fireball and then air fireball in a 2D game. And that's going to be something in Street Fighter 6 that we'll get to that. But you brought up the Demon Flip, which he did not have in Street Fighter 2. But in Street Fighter Alpha and onward, he had the Demon Flip, which is like 4 moves in one. And for those that don't know, he does a flip into the air, and then from there, he can either come out of it with a dive kick, or he can do a palm strike that's an overhead, so is the dive kick usually, or he can grab you, or he can do nothing, and then he'll go into a slide. So
he could also, depending on the game, air fireball as well from that spot. It depends on the game, but yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, maybe 5.
Yeah.
So the point is that, and this is another thing, in Street Fighter 6, the mental stack, the juggling options are a big thing. And this one move, it's 5 right into itself. It's like, okay, that's a thing to begin with. You don't like it when Cammy does random hooligans at you and you don't know if you have to block high or block low or try to evade the grab, or she's going to come out of it with a dive kick. Well, this is that plus more. But that move, in and of itself, even got better in Street Fighter V, because in Street Fighter V, I think this was the first time Demon Hit started hitting on the way up, which meant that he could combo into it. And one of the things that you brought up...
And use it defensively on top of it. Like it was a defensive... Instead of using EXDP, which was much more risky because you might get crush countered, he could just do EX Demon Flip and catch people, start up and other stuff, which... Yeah.
So one of the first applications into Street Fighter 6, if they gave him, say they give him the Street Fighter 5 version where it hits on the way up and you can cancel into a fireball and all of those other options I listed. Okay, he FADCs. He drive rushes in neutral, puts a button on you, you block it. Okay, now he's extra +4, goes into Demon Flip in your face from there. And now you're dealing with all of these options because you weren't able to stuff a drive rush.
Yeah.
It's like I start to think about situations like that. And John, have you elaborated any more on like the horrors that might be? Because that was something that you brought up, is that situation of him rushing up in your face and then being plus and using that plus. I mean, he doesn't have to go into Demon Flip. He could do a number of other things when he's up there in your face. But he also has this 5-6 jack of all trades move in one that he could be plus in your face and then go immediately into and be above your head.
Yeah, I mean, if that's not giving the community nightmares, except for if you're planning on playing Akuma, then you're salivating. Then you're like, hey, this is perfectly fair and balanced. Akuma's probably going to be like, what is it, 9th overall in the tier link? He
might even be a little bit better than Ken. He could be 6th.
He could be. Yeah, so, but yeah, maybe Capcom's going to offset this by having Demon Flip have like a lot of startup or something like that. Maybe they'll figure this out, but man, the history here says that this character is going to be really strong. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned that he usually has a little bit of a trajectory on the tier lists through the individual games. I do agree. Part of that is people don't realize all of his potential first off. I think we saw that both Akuma and Seth in Street Fighter 4 were characters that people went back to and said, oh man, they were even better than we realized. We just didn't have enough time to get all their stuff. But like in that game, for instance, he had an infinite that you could do, standing roundhouse into jab, standing roundhouse into jab, things like that. Talk about characters that are allowed to be top tier. Akuma is one of those, but the community, we definitely push back on this. When he was doing his thing in Street Fighter V, we were pushing back, we were writing articles, we were talking about it on the podcast. When I remember in Street Fighter 4, he was one of the biggest offenders of being able to vortex and take advantage of option selects through that. And he wasn't the only one to do it, but I think he was the most egregious one. And a lot of the changes that came to Ultra, like the delayed wake up, which carried into 5 and 6, and has pretty much become a staple because of things that Akuma was doing in large part. So he does tend to get knocked down because he shines so bright in like the penultimate version of a game, and then he'll get knocked down a little bit and he'll be somewhere in top 5 instead of solid top 1 or 2. But I don't see how you're going to balance this character within the playground of Street Fighter 6 and not make him amazing. Something else I'll bring up, Air Fireball. Not only is this an amazing move that has been really hard for Capcom to balance since day one, Air Fireball has been ridiculous, and my mind goes back to, I think it was the Evo top 8 of, it might have been 2013, where Infiltration and Tokido met, both playing Akuma, and it was just, the whole ballroom was filled with people going, he, because both Akumas were just jumping back, throwing air fireballs, because it's safe, it's a retreat. Now, they got rid of jump back air fireball in Street Fighter V, trying to nerf this move. You could do it, I think, if you spent EX meter or if he was in V-trigger and it was enhanced, but he normally couldn't jump back. And even then, this move was ridiculous. It was just a hitbox that's on the screen, and it's not going horizontally like really, really powerful, slow-moving fireballs that we've already been experiencing in Street Fighter 6 for the neutral. This is going at a diagonal downward. If it hits you, he's usually, it depends on how they design it, but he's usually in a spot where he can take full advantage of that hit and go into a full combo. But here's my thing. Akuma's full screen in Street Fighter 6. Neutral jump. Throw out one of these fireballs. Or maybe forward jump. Throw out one of these fireballs. Drive rush behind it. How powerful is drive rush behind a fireball already in this game? And now you're going to give Akuma this.
Yeah. I really go back to Street Fighter V here, even though most people don't like to talk about that game. I actually went and looked at the frame data on Akuma's air fireball when he hit with it. It was plus 1 million, I counted. And so if you needed to hit confirm it, you actually could just throw it out there, go make a sandwich, come back, and you would still have time to finish your combo, because Capcom did not want to take any risk whatsoever with players not being able to use his air fireball in combos. And it was like, what were you thinking when you did this? And then his red fireball, I think is going to be particularly good against people who like to drive impact because it's multiple hitting property. And you just start going down the list here, and basically Akuma's going to have a tool for every situation in the game, for every character in the game, because that is what is expected. And then we'll get into stuff like his Hurricane Kick, because not only is that very good for combos, but for side switching, and considering how important the corner is in Street Fighter 6, the ability to side switch and do strong damage at the same time may be something Akuma is one of the best at, if not the very best at, because that's the history of this character. It was in Street Fighter V, they finally nerfed it. They're like, oh, okay, so you get side switch and damage as Akuma, and it took them like 3 years, and they're like, maybe that's too good, and they finally nerfed it.
Pick one or the other.
Yeah, yes. You should have to choose, but characters like Ken don't have to choose or anything like that, so I don't know why Akuma would have to either.
That's another thing. His moves started out as better than Ryu's, like a better version of almost all of Ryu's. And that's another thing to point out in Street Fighter V, his already high utility Tatsu. Because the Tatsu, forever Akuma's combo has been Tatsu into like DP instead of just getting the damage, and then he's usually got like a good situation afterwards. Or if you do like the medium version, he can side switch. In Street Fighter V, they gave him kind of a new animation that was a side switch animation on that Tatsu, right? Where he hits you and kind of comes to the other side and kicks the other way. One of the biggest advantages or the strongest tools to have in Street Fighter 6, as we sort of discerned in a previous episode of Talk and Block, was the ability to corner carry, and right there inside of that is the ability to side switch, especially if you can do so meterlessly. One of the biggest things that Ken can do in this game is he can side switch with one of his Dragon Lashes and then send you to the corner, and all the work that you've done pushing him there is thanks for all the effort. I'll take it from here, boys.
Yeah. Thank you for playing my game for me.
Yes. So they've added utility to his already high utility maneuvers throughout the years. Yeah. One of the other things here is he's always got a 3-frame, and I would assume in this game it would just be a 4-frame because that's the fastest a move can be. 3-frame jab, so 4-frame jab in Street Fighter 6, and in Invincible DP. That is a big privilege to have in this game on the defensive side of things, and I have zero reason to believe that Akuma won't have that in a DP and a jab. And then who knows, maybe something like his Demon Flip will be able to be used in that way as well, in defense as well. But point is, he's got the basics of defense already in his back pocket, and then who knows what else Capcom might give him. Another big thing, and this is something that sets him apart from most all of the other Shotos, is his teleport. And his teleport is interesting because to me it feels like a fairly all or nothing move in its basic design. It's very obvious when it happens. He moves across the screen in like this echoed way, and if you design this move to be punishable, then it's almost worthless. But if you design it so that it's not very punishable, it becomes an amazing maneuver, again, to get out of hot spots, including the corner. And I go, it's like, what is this move going to look like in Street Fighter 6? Maybe you can nerf it by making it susceptible to certain attacks and not others, like make it throw invincible but not strike invincible, the EX version, this is or that's. But when I think about it, if Akuma is able to use this move to get out, then you usually have to call it out early. Like, you have to simply jump back and then do like another jump back to time it so that you're getting a punish on him. And if you're doing that, then you're not guarding against all the other things that he might do on Wake Up. And maybe you look silly because you try to call out teleport, you jump back from him in the corner, and he just stands there and goes, oh, I'll just waltz right out of here. And the point is, his plethora of options. And in this game, another big thing that we said was really important is having a plethora of options. Mental stack is huge. Just by simply having a bunch of juggling pins, each juggling pin becomes more difficult to predict and to act around. And this character is programmed with them in there. Like, unless they fundamentally change him, he's got so many.
Yeah. I really want to be a fly on the wall in Capcom's balancing room when they're talking about Akuma, and they're like just listing off all the, the Swiss Army knife of options he's got, and then they look at Alex and they're like, but Alex is a way better character, so don't worry about it. Akuma's fine as he is. And then they get to people like, like the low tier characters like, Dan and Honda and stuff, and they're like, yeah, whatever. No one expects these guys to be good. It just, I really want to know more about their balancing process, like when some of this stuff comes up, because it just, we've gotten the impression over the years that they look at a handful of characters and say, if this character is really strong, if this character like Sagat or Bison or something like that, or Akuma, of course, if they're really strong, it's not a big deal. Who cares? Kind of thing. But then they look at someone, like a Blanca or a Honda or anything like that, and they go, there's no way we're making this character too strong because the community hates it, or like a Vega or something like that. Like they're not going to be that good. And so it's quite interesting to me. I really wonder what their balancing process is like, kind of like top to bottom. Yeah.
Well, and forever they've seemed to say, we can give Akuma all these things and we will just make sure that he has the lowest stamina, the lowest health and stun in the game. That's not nothing. Yes. But I don't think that in any world it's proven to be enough to really make this character balanced, because he's always floated to the top.
Yes.
And I mean, sure, he'll have, I fully expect, if he has the same life as everybody else, that's even worse, but I fully expect that he'll be lower. And that glass cannon status, where he's got a really high ceiling, but he's relatively squishy, at least in the competitive pro circuits, has really benefited the player, the skilled player over the rest of the community. Like it's certainly erred on the side of making Akuma strong. It's been really nice to be a glass cannon. Characters like Akuma and Cammy, for instance, or if you're fast on your feet, if you can do all the things, and it's just on you to not get hit, but you have plenty of tools to not get hit with, people really rise to the top there. And speaking of being fast on your feet, this is something that doesn't get brought up all that often in the discussions of balance, but walk speed is so important for characters, because it naturally feeds into your ability to play defense, play offense, play footsies, position yourself. Do you get Oki? Because maybe if you're fast enough to walk up to him, it's a difference maker between getting Oki. It feeds into so many aspects, and Akuma is almost always one of the fastest characters on his feet. He's very fleet-footed, and that's going to naturally play into his Street Fighter 6 arsenal, given that it's there. It's like all of these things, walk speed plus amazing normals. I was reading in I think it was the SRK wiki or something like that. Sorry, that one of Akuma's drawbacks in Street Fighter V was that he had stubby normals. And I know that was brought up initially because his low forward didn't seem to reach as far as others, but we all remember how powerful that low forward is because his movement speed was so good that even a stubbier low forward was not that bad to have. And he also had that far-reaching standing heavy punch. That was not a stubby normal.
That's a classic downplay from a top-tier character, because they take a general thing that's in the game, because Street Fighter V notoriously had stubby normals, and they're like, look at Akuma's stubby normals, and it's like, well, almost everyone in the game has that. Can you acknowledge that, please? And they're like, no, I play Akuma. I'm not going to acknowledge anything that's going to detract from me filling this top-tier privilege. What's your problem?
Yeah. So even then, I don't feel like he's had particularly stubby normals over the time, and some of the most nightmarish ones, like that standing Fierce Punch that was also cancelable in SF5. That did so much for him. So that's that walk speed. So let me recap a little bit of what we've kind of gone over so far in terms of what his apparent advantages will be. 4-frame normals plus invincible DP, amazing defense, and then maybe teleport too. Air Fireball and Drive Rush means amazing approach potential. Walk speed being very quick plus really good normals or even just above average normals, that tells me amazing footsies. Drive Rush plus Demon Flip, so come up on you, put you at very negative frame data, and then go into Demon Flip right above your head and your face. Great mix-ups. And then we have to talk about Raging Demon, his extra bonus super, because usually in recent times, not only have they given Akuma traditional supers, they've also given him Raging Demon on top, which is essentially a running or moving command grab that's similar to the teleport. To me, feels kind of like an all or nothing. It's either something he's going to use and take half of your health from you when he does it, and that's part of the nature of this like most powerful attack in Street Fighter, or it's going to be very difficult to hit, not practical at all, and you would never spend all the meter, because in Street Fighter 5 you had to spend all of your V-trigger plus all of your super, and I suspect that it might be something like this. Maybe you burn out if you're Akuma and you use Raging Demon, something like that. But like, point is, it's a running command grab. Like, how do you usually he can't combo into it, so how do you the utility is he can either do it in certain situations or not really at all. But if you give it to him and you make it like an anti-air like it was in Street Fighter 4, or just he's doing pressure on you and he can cancel one of his moves, Kara into Demon, and he's in your face and he hits you for a matter of fact 50% of your health, it's like that's another huge, he basically has a Zangief advantage while being fast as Cammy and as strong as Ryu. What?
And some of the Raging Demon setups are you can't react to him basically, because he'd like whiff a normal above your head and cancel into Raging Demon. So basically you either had to see that setup coming, or you're getting hit by it, and there goes half your health, all that kind of stuff. And it just, I think the odds of Akuma, at the very worst, he's going to be a pretty good character and very likely a top tier one, because Akuma is basically never a weak character. Shoutouts to Daigo who said that, but again, when he releases in the springtime later this year, I think he's going to be a nightmare. And one of the reasons I think he's going to be actually really good that we haven't talked about yet is modern controls, because Akuma is typically he requires a solid amount of precision, not insane levels. This is not like the most technical character in the game, but he's complicated enough that the pros mess up his stuff. However, you put that tool set in the hands of a player using modern controls with Akuma's just multitude of options, and they are doing frame perfect stuff every time out, one button supers and specials and all that kind of stuff. What does this character look like then? Because you usually have something of an execution ceiling doing his, perfect air fireballs or something like that, where it's now like, I can just do those. And so how bad is modern Akuma going to be in this game in terms of like playing against him? This character.
Single input demon.
Yes.
Guys, single input demon. Oh, did he drive rush up on you and he's put you in minus 37 block stun, and then he has 3,000 different things he can do from this very advantageous, single input demon. And then maybe some Oki afterwards, right? For good measure.
He has to have Oki after that. It's not fair if he doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, well, so he's probably going to be the best, if not one of the best. At least top 6. And what are some practical ways that Capcom might even begin to balance this? I brought up Raging Demon. Maybe that also burns him out. Like he has to spend all of his drive gauge and his super meter at level 3 to do the Raging Demon. I don't know. Does that even balance it? Well, do you have off the top of your head any potential nerfs that you've been thinking about, or just ways of corralling the essence of the Satsui no Hado so it doesn't get everywhere?
I really think the side switch stuff is a big deal for him, because Capcom just is like out of the gate, they usually just love to give him everything. And then I would specifically highlight his air fireball, because there's numerous cast members where Capcom doesn't seem to think that they're going to add air fireballs or like dive kicks into the game at some point. And so you get a character who has no options for dealing with that stuff. in neutral, and so those matchups where you go against a dive kick character or someone like with Akuma's air fireball are almost unwinnable a lot of times, and you just get into brutal situations. And so I hope Capcom looks specifically at those two moves for how that is going to work with the rest of the cast. But history shows they're going to look at that and go, Alex is fine, so we're going to make Akuma great.
So maybe he only gets air fireball if he uses OD. You know, maybe he can only do air fireball and it's only a forward jumping situation, because neutral jump and back jump, that's just too good, man. Something like that for air fireball. Maybe he's not the fastest character on his feet in the game. And some combination of all of these, because you still want him to be Akuma. I get it. I don't want a weak Akuma, you know? This next one that I've sort of thought of and I'm considering probably takes him too far away from the Akuma that we all know and love and hate. But it is something that was proposed by Capcom initially, and so I wanted to bring it up. There was some character concept art for, I believe it was Street Fighter V, where Akuma was carrying a baby. Nice SpongeBob cup, that's pretty cool. Akuma was carrying a baby on his back. And similar to how they say Oro is kind of balanced, that he's more powerful than everyone, but he's also has to either, in Third Strike, he puts his hand away, and in Street Fighter V, he's balancing holding a turtle for the majority of his fight. There might be some kind of a nerf to Akuma if he has to consider that he's also being the pacifier and carrying a baby while he fights. And some
or
of
carrying,
the most...
they could make it more accurate and make it like half the FGC player base who plays Akuma carrying him on his back. Yeah, make it a literal.
I think you've ever That was good. And they're a bunch of babies at me. All right, no, just kidding. What was I gonna say? Oh, some of the worst characters in this game are the ones that have to jump through that extra hoop. Jamie getting his drinks.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing for him to have to get those. Now, at the same time, once he gets them, people are like, you can't nerf the process too much because he'll quickly become the best character in the game. Manon having to get her medal system. I haven't heard as much about her being too scary about getting to that medal system too quickly, because people just aren't too afraid of this character, at least not yet. I don't know if this is what you want to do with Akuma. That seems like a pretty big departure from where he has always been. But, like I say, it was Capcom's idea once upon a time. Now, he doesn't have a baby with him in the character artwork that we have seen with him so far, so I highly doubt it. Even as I talk about
maybe
really
if you mash the buttons too much, all of his hair stuff gets wrapped around his arms, and you can't. Yeah,
little Easter egg nerf.
The anti-masher, what is that? The Wolverine Swiss cheese move in Ultimate Marvel. They added literally to nerf people mashing with Wolverine and stuff, and so you'd see Swiss cheese come out there. Boy, that would be a fun thing.
So I wanna turn it over to the audience, to the people. Do you think there is a balanced version of Akuma in any timeline en route to Street Fighter 6? And if not, how do you think that Capcom should try to balance the character while maintaining the essence that is the ultimate boss, Satsui no Hado badass Akuma? I want to hear about it because I don't really know. I mean, we've been looking at it and we know it's coming. I think the best thing to do is just play him and be assimilated into the masses and just play him. John, did you have any final thoughts on Akuma coming to Street Fighter 6?
I'm terrified.